The Kansas sun hung low, casting a copper-gold hue over the prairie as dust whirled like memories through the narrow main street of Elderglen. The town was modest, stitched together by planks and prayers, its people hardened by loss and wind. Windmills creaked above scorched grass. Children played near dry water troughs, while mothers clutched baskets of cornbread and canned beans. Life was lean, laughter rare. Sam McAllister stood alone on the wooden porch of the general store, one boot propped against a railing, chewing on a piece of straw. His frame was solid, shaped by years of hauling feed and fencing land. His broad shoulders sagged slightly beneath his worn duster, as though each day piled more weight on him. His face, creased with sun and silence, was unreadable. Folks had stopped trying to draw him out years ago, ever since the day the trail wagon vanished with his wife and son inside it. Some said bandits, others blamed Comanche. Sam never chased answers. He had buried a coffin with no body, and with it his voice. As he turned to leave the store, something, or someone, caught his eye. A woman stood at the edge of town, her figure outlined against the dying light. She wore a plain gray dress, threadbare and too light for the season. Beside her stood a boy, no older than 6, thin as a rail, with a white-brimmed hat that drooped over his eyes. They were looking straight at Sam, not with fear, with purpose. Emma Carlisle walked toward him, each step deliberate, like she was holding herself together with sheer will. Her face was pale but striking, and though her clothes were ragged, she held herself with dignity. Her hands trembled as she approached. "You're Sam McAllister?" she asked, her voice low and clipped with exhaustion. Sam gave a curt nod, chewing slower now. "I need your help." That made him arch a brow, but he said nothing. She looked around. People were watching, already whispering. "I won't waste your time. I'm a widow," she continued. "My husband died in Missouri last winter. He left nothing but debts. Dangerous men want payment. I have nothing left but the boy." She placed a hand on the child's shoulder. "We need protection." Sam studied them. The boy was silent, eyes focused on the dirt. Something about him stirred a pain Sam had buried deep, too deep. The boy looked like no. He shook the thought off. "You're skin me to pay off his debts?" Sam asked, voice rusty from disuse. "No, I'm asking you to marry me." The silence that followed was louder than gunfire. A breeze rustled through the street, and someone's horse snorted nearby. Sam's jaw clenched. "I ain't looking for a wife," he muttered. "I'm not looking for a husband," Emma replied, her tone calm but firm. "Just a name to keep us safe. We'll work. We'll earn our keep. And when it's safe, we'll go." Sam looked past her to the boy again, still staring at the ground. There was something unsettling in the resemblance. The way the boy stood, quiet and guarded, the shape of his jaw, even the scar above his brow, a scar Sam remembered kissing on a sleeping child 5 years ago. "What's the boy's name?" he asked careful. "Luke." Sam's heart skipped once. His son's name had been Thomas, but his wife used to call him Lukey when she rocked him to sleep. His mouth went dry. "You said you're not here for charity. So why me?" Emma took a slow breath. "Because you're the only man in this town who's ever been kind to a stranger, even in silence." Sam looked down at his boots. He didn't consider himself kind, just tired. Of people, of pain, of everything. Still, something stirred. Not desire, not hope. Something like obligation wrapped in the ghost of a second chance. "You'll clean the house," he said finally. "I don't cook. And the woodpile's behind the shed." Emma nodded. "Understood. We'll speak no vows. Just papers." "I'd prefer it." "And the boy," Sam glanced at Luke. "He'll pull his weight." Emma hesitated, then nodded. "He already does." The following morning, they married in the back of the chapel. The preacher's wife served as witness. There was no kiss, no ceremony beyond what the law required. Sam didn't remove his hat. Emma didn't cry. The house felt colder when they arrived, even though the stove was lit. Emma quietly swept the floor, unpacked a single sack of belongings, and set about boiling water. Luke sat by the fireplace, eyes darting between Sam and the flames. At dinner, they sat in silence. Sam chewed stew without tasting it. Emma stared at her spoon. Luke barely ate. I can build a coop out back, Emma said finally. Raise hens. Sell eggs. Sam grunted. There's wood in the barn. A long pause followed. Then Luke spoke. Mr. McAllister, do you have any toys? The voice, small, unsure, made Sam flinch. Not because of the question, but because it sounded like a whisper from a past he thought was dead. He stared at the boy, feeling dizzy. No, he said, standing up. Don't need toys. The next day, while Emma was hanging laundry, Sam searched the bottom drawer of his writing desk. He hadn't opened it in years. Under yellowed letters and an old bandana, he found a carved wooden horse, once painted blue, his son's favorite toy. That night, he left it near Luke's bedroll. He didn't say anything when the boy hugged it the next morning, and still he said nothing when Emma touched his arm and murmured, "Thank you." But something had shifted. Not loudly, not all at once, but the widow's bargain was beginning to feel less like a transaction, and more like the start of something unfinished, something waiting to be healed. The prairie wind howled across the flatlands, dragging with it the scent of dust and regret. Summer had faded into the amber chill of early autumn, and with each day that passed, Sam McAllister found it harder to pretend the past hadn't begun to echo inside his home. Emma moved through the house like she belonged there, though she never claimed to. She swept, stitched, baked, and boiled water for Sam's aching knees without a word of complaint. She never pried, never questioned the quiet corners he kept to himself, but it was the way she looked at Luke that pierced Sam the deepest, a kind of fierce love soaked in sorrow. She was guarding something, and Sam knew the feeling well. Luke, meanwhile, had begun to smile. It was rare, a fleeting curl at the edge of his mouth when he watched the hens peck around the yard or when he ran his fingers over the wooden horse Sam had given him. He followed Sam sometimes, mimicking his stride, watching how he swung the axe or tightened the reins. Still, he barely spoke, and when he did, his words came soft and hesitant, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing to the wrong man. Sam caught himself watching the boy more than he cared to admit. The child had his son's stare, that same deep, almost solemn gaze that looked older than his years. A part of him wanted to believe in something impossible, but he wouldn't let hope take root, not yet. One crisp morning, as mist curled across the edge of the pasture, Sam noticed something peculiar. A small locket had fallen near the woodpile. He picked it up, ran a thumb across the worn silver, and flicked it open. Inside was a miniature portrait, faded but unmistakable. His wife, his real wife, Sarah. His breath caught like a bullet in his throat. The image was a few years old, but the eyes, the tilt of her mouth, there was no mistaking it. Why would Emma have this? He kept the locket in his coat pocket that day, saying nothing, but his mind was a stampede of questions. Had Emma known Sarah? Were they related? Was this some ploy? That night, after Luke had gone to bed, Sam found Emma on the porch, peeling apples beneath the stars. He sat beside her, his hands resting on his knees. "I found this," he said quietly, offering the locket. Emma's fingers froze. Her eyes flicked to his face, then to the open pendant. A long silence passed before she spoke. It was Sarah's. Sam nodded once. "You knew her." Emma closed the locket and placed it in her lap. Her face had gone pale. "We were in the same wagon train," she said at last, "headed west. She was traveling with Thomas, your boy. You'd stayed behind for supplies. She and we shared meals, stories. She talked about you." Sam's chest tightened. "What happened?" Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. "Bandits came at dusk one evening. We were deep in the Rockies. Fires burning low. I remember Sarah holding Thomas, so close I could barely see his face. The men wanted supplies, gold, weapons. They dragged us out of the wagons." Sam's fists clenched. "She told me to run," Emma continued. "She handed me Thomas and screamed for me to go while they weren't looking. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran until my legs gave out." Sam stared at her. "Are you saying?" Emma nodded, tears forming. "Luke is your son." Silence thundered in Sam's ears. He stood, staggered a step, and grabbed the porch post to steady himself. "I didn't know who you were at first," she said quickly. But the moment I saw your eyes in his, I knew. I didn't say anything because I thought maybe you wouldn't want us. Maybe you'd moved on. Sam turned toward the window where Luke slept by the hearth. The carved horse nestled beneath one arm. All the moments, the voice, the look, the questions clicked into place. He was his boy. I buried an empty box, Sam whispered. I thought he was gone. Emma stood now, her voice trembling. He doesn't remember. He was too young. I called him Luke to keep him safe. Sam swallowed hard, then looked at her. Really looked at her. You saved him, he said. I tried. He stepped toward her, voice softer. And you carried this alone. Emma nodded. It wasn't about me. It was about him. Sam sat back down slowly, the weight of 5 years settling into his bones. You could have left. You could have given him to anyone. But I didn't, she said, because Sarah trusted me, and because I loved him too. The stars wheeled above them in a slow arc, and for a while, neither of them spoke. The prairie stretched quiet and endless beyond the fence line. Finally, Sam spoke again, voice thick. He should know. Emma hesitated. You think he's ready? Sam looked at the boy through the window again, eyes glassy. I am. That night, he sat beside Luke's bed, hand hovering just above the boy's hair. Hey there, partner, he said gently. Luke stirred, rubbing his eyes. I need to tell you something real important, Sam said, his voice breaking. You got a name, and a place, and a daddy who's been looking for you for a long time. Luke blinked at him. You? Sam nodded, a tear rolling down his cheek. Yeah, me. Luke didn't say anything for a moment. Then, slowly, he leaned into Sam's chest, wrapping his arms around his neck. Sam held him like a man trying to hold back the ocean. Outside, Emma watched from the porch, her arms wrapped around herself, face lifted to the stars. The past had echoed long enough. Now, it was time to listen to the future. The mornings had started coming gentler now. Luke's laughter echoed in the barn, chasing away the silence that had once lived there. He'd taken to the ranch like a colt to open fields, eager, clumsy, and full of light. Sam taught him how to cinch a saddle, throw a lasso, and tend to the colts, and Luke soaked it all up like roots drinking rain. But peace, Sam knew, was never built to last long in the West. One gray-skied afternoon, a rider came thundering down the trail, horse lathered in sweat. Dust flew as he reined in hard outside the gate, hat low, a rifle strapped to his saddle. Sam stepped off the porch and recognized him instantly, Marshal Dalton Reese. Sam, the marshal called, breathless and grave. You need to come with me. Sam's jaw tensed. What's this about? There's a man in town asking after a woman with a limp and a boy with your eyes. Says they're his. Says she stole Em from a wagon train 5 years back. Sam didn't move. He didn't need to ask. He knew exactly who that man was. Emma stepped out behind him, face pale. Her hands gripped the porch railing as if she'd fall without it. His name's Barry Griggs, the marshal added. Claimed he was her husband. Had papers too. Worn, but legal. Emma didn't speak, but Sam could feel the fear radiating from her. He's lying, she whispered. Sam turned to her. You know him? She nodded slowly. I was never his wife. He was the leader of the raiders, the ones who attacked the wagons. After I escaped with Thomas, with Luke, he tracked me for months. He said if I ever told anyone what he did, he'd kill the boy. Sam's blood chilled. The marshal looked between them, the puzzle pieces clicking together in his weathered face. Is that the truth? Sam nodded. It is. The marshal sighed, removing his hat. Then you better come set it straight. Town's already buzzing with whispers. If Griggs convinces Judge Talbot, he'll have every right to take the boy and her. Emma turned to Sam, eyes shining. Don't let him take Luke. Please. Sam took her hand, gripping it tight. He won't. Not while I'm breathing. The courthouse was thick with the smell of old paper, sweat, and smoke from the wood stove. A handful of townsfolk filled the back benches, drawn by the scent of scandal, or maybe just boredom. Griggs stood at the front with smug confidence, a worn marriage certificate in hand, and a cruel smile curling his lip. He wore fine clothes, too fine for a man of true labor, and gold glinted at his pinky finger. Judge Talbot, a stern man with bushy gray brows, looked up from the documents. "Mr. McAllister, you're claiming the child is yours?" "I am," Sam said, voice clear. "His name's Thomas McAllister. He's my son. He was taken from my wife during a raid." Griggs snorted. "That woman was my wife. She ran off with the kid, brainwashed him. You're just some lonely rancher who got roped into her lies." Emma sat still, hands in her lap, face like stone. "Is there any proof of this raid?" the judge asked. Sam turned to Emma. "Tell him." Emma nodded and slowly recounted everything. The ambush, the screaming, the gunfire, the way Griggs struck her across the face when she refused to obey, the way Sarah, Sam's wife, had died shielding her son. Tears welled in the eyes of one woman in the gallery. Even the judge looked shaken. The marshal stepped forward. "I rode with the 7th that year. That wagon train was wiped clean off the map. Bodies burned and scattered. We never caught the men who did it, but I remember the name Barrett Griggs showing up in the reports." Sam added, "I have a family photograph. Luke matches Thomas to the bone. You can test it. Talk to anyone who knew my boy before." Griggs's facade cracked. "They're both lying. They just want the land." Judge Talbot raised a hand. "Enough." He turned back to Sam and Emma. "This is a serious accusation. If you're wrong, you'll be charged with harboring a child illegally. But if you're right," he turned to Griggs, voice ice, "you'll swing." A silence hung in the room like fog. "I believe them," the judge finally said, "and until I have reason not to, I rule in favor of Mr. McAllister. The boy stays." Griggs exploded forward, but the marshal grabbed him by the collar. "I wouldn't." As Griggs was hauled out of the courthouse kicking and shouting threats, Emma collapsed into Sam's arms, shaking. "It's over," he said, pressing his lips to her forehead. "He's gone." Back at the ranch, Sam saddled 2 horses at sunrise. Luke watched him, curiosity blooming in his eyes. "Where we going?" Sam smiled. "To your mother's grave. It's time you knew where you come from." They rode in silence across the wide plains, golden light spilling over the hills. Sam showed Luke the small stone he'd placed 5 years earlier beneath the cottonwood tree. "She was brave," Sam said softly. "Braver than me." Luke knelt, pressing a small bouquet of prairie lilies against the marker. "I wish I remembered her," he whispered. Sam knelt beside him. "You've got her heart. That's better than memory." They rode home slower, talking about everything and nothing. The wind was at their backs, and for the first time, it didn't carry sorrow. It carried promise. That evening, Sam found Emma in the barn, brushing the mare. He stood there a moment, watching her quietly. "You stayed," he said. Emma turned. "So did you." He stepped closer. "This ranch, it was never meant for just one man. And I think maybe it's time we stop pretending we're just surviving." She held his gaze, and when he offered his hand, she took it. The bond had been forged in fire and blood, but it held, stronger than either of them expected. The wind had softened with the coming of spring. The snow that once clung to the mountains melted into the creeks, and the fields around the McAllister ranch began to bloom in hues of green and gold. There was a stillness to the land now, not the empty silence that had haunted Sam for years, but a peace born of something settled, something rooted. Luke ran across the front pasture, his boots kicking up loose soil as he shouted for Sam to watch him rope the fence post like he'd been taught. Sam leaned against the porch rail, arms crossed, a rare smile tucked beneath his mustache. "He's got your aim," Emma said softly from behind, her voice a mix of admiration and sorrow. Sam turned, taking her in, her frame stronger now, her eyes no longer heavy with fear. In place of the fragile widow who'd once bargained her life for a child's safety stood a woman who had come to know herself again. "He's got her fire," Sam said, looking back at the boy. "Sarah's, but he's got your strength too." Emma looked down, brushing her hands over her apron. "I still wake up expecting someone to knock on that door, saying it was all a mistake, that I've stolen something I wasn't meant to have." Sam stepped closer. "You didn't steal him, Emma. You saved him. And me. His hand found hers. This place. It was just wood and dust until you two came along. Now it feels like home again. She met his eyes then, the sunlight catching the blue in them. I never thought I'd find one again. That night, after dinner, Sam brought out an old wooden box from the loft. He placed it on the kitchen table with reverence, dusting off years of memory. What's that? Luke asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. Sam opened the lid slowly, revealing folded letters, a silver brooch, and a faded photograph of a young woman holding a baby. My wife, Sam said, handing the picture to Luke. And you, before the fire took everything. Luke studied it with quiet wonder. She's pretty. She was more than that. Brave, kind, and stubborn as a mule. Sam smiled wistfully. She loved you more than the world. Emma reached for one of the letters, her fingers tracing the ink. These are for him, Sam said. I want him to know where he came from, but I also want him to know where he's going. Luke looked up. Where are we going? Sam exchanged a glance with Emma before answering. Forward, son. Together. The following Sunday, the townsfolk gathered for the spring fair. The McAllister Ranch had always kept its distance from the social happenings of Dunridge, but this year, things were different. Sam, in a clean shirt and polished boots, rode and with Emma seated confidently behind him in a buggy, Luke grinning beside her. Heads turned, whispers rippled, but no one dared question it, not after what had happened with Griggs. If anything, the town had grown curious, even respectful. Mayor Albright approached them near the pie stand, tipping his hat with a smile. Sam McAllister back in town. Didn't think I'd live to see it. Sam shook his hand, just making sure the boy gets to know the folks he's gonna grow up around. The mayor looked to Emma, and this must be the woman who made a legend out of a ghost. Emma smiled a little shyly. Just a woman trying to build something honest. You've done more than that, Albright said. This town could use more like you. Later, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, Luke ran off with the other boys, a cloth flag clutched in his hand. Laughter spilled from his lips as he chased and was chased, his limp barely noticeable now. Emma watched him, emotion tightening her throat. He's free. Sam wrapped an arm around her shoulder. He is, because you gave him that. She looked up at him. What about you, Sam? Have you forgiven yourself yet? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he followed Luke's movement with his eyes. How the boy laughed without fear. How he didn't flinch when a stranger called his name. I don't know, Sam finally said, but watching you, I think maybe I'm getting closer. That night, back at the ranch, Sam lit the fire while Emma washed dishes, and Luke fell asleep with a book in his lap. Outside, coyotes howled in the distance, but it was a sound that no longer meant danger. Just life moving as it should. Emma sat beside Sam, their silence companionable. I used to believe that the past was something you had to outrun, she said quietly. Now I think maybe it's something you have to face head-on before you can let it go. Sam nodded. We carry our scars, Emma, but they don't have to carry us. She reached into her pocket and handed him something small. A tiny carving of a horse, roughly whittled, its legs uneven. Luke made it, she said. Said he wanted you to have it. Said it's a thank you for fighting. Sam held it carefully, turning it in his hand like it was something precious. It means more than he knows. She watched him for a moment, then said softly, You never asked for any of this, did you? Sam turned to her, voice rough with emotion. No, but now I can't imagine life without it. She leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. Then maybe that's what redemption is. Not erasing the past, but building something better in spite of it. He didn't reply, but his hand found hers again and held fast. Outside, the moon climbed high over the plains. Inside, a new kind of quiet settled over the ranch. Not lonely, not broken, just full. Full of things once lost and now found. Roots had taken hold, deep and firm. And with them, something else had blossomed. Home.